All right, well, um, let TP and Ryan loosen you guys up a little bit. I think the part that, I knew coming off the field Saturday and then on the bus ride home with our players is, these things really obviously matter a lot to them, as we all would know. It sounds silly to say that maybe, but I would tell you, in this profession, being in it for 30 years, to see the guys care the way they do, not only in their preparation during the course of the week, but their reactions after the game. Gets me excited to coach these guys more and more every day. Sunday to sit through that film session with them, to sit in a team meeting with them, to realize the disappointment that they have, but to kind of let them understand how we got there, right? So on Sunday in a team meeting, I try to always do something to kind of captivate them, let them learn in a moment, but also move them forward. So I basically took the last meaningful snap of all three Big Ten games we've played in, and started with the Nebraska game and showed them at the end of the game in a victory formation. So that was a play that we had actually discussed the night before on Friday night, right? You try to visualize things, put them in their mind, and I had showed them on the Friday night before we played Nebraska the end of game scenarios in the Iowa game and another game that were a Big Ten road game on the road for Nebraska, and I showed them how that team had played, and at the end of the game they were playing in a victory formation. I said, this is where you can be tomorrow if you play the plan, all right, and execute what we do. And the way it folded out, it did happen that way, right? And to kind of have that moment on Sunday with them, I wanted them to reflect. I did take them back to that moment and say, like, one of the things that concerned me is in the post game of that event, like, there were certain comments that they made to the media, right? Like, this is a statement game, there was one guy had said, and there was like several comments about how they were so excited about that moment that I, at the time, refrained. I didn't make any outlandish, hey, you can't do this, can't do that. But I did know at the time, like, we were really too excited about a win that probably could have went the other way just as easy, right? It was a one-score game, 8 points the way it played out, but it was a one-score game that we won in our favor. And then you take the Purdue game, and the next game I looked at, I'd take them to the Maryland game, right? And the last play, the meaningful snap, was a field goal from the 14-yard line with 3 seconds remaining. That same field goal in the first half was missed from the 14-yard line, right? And they lined up for the same field goal, executed. We had some things we talked about on that play that could have changed the results of that snap. A full start, some different things that possibly could have taken that game and changed the results, but it didn't. We didn't do enough to win that game, but you were in it. And then we go to the Purdue game, and once again to find ourselves in the last snap of the game to be in a meaningful snap from the basically inside the 20-yard line, and to not be able to execute obviously sealed the fate. The last snap was actually a victory formation for them, but my point to him was, you've been in 3 Big Ten games, that it was down to the last final possession. You won 1, you lost 2. Let's continue to move forward. We also had a UTSA game that wasn't a conference game, but it was a close game, one possession game. When I got here, I really wanted to know the makeup of our roster and what they had experienced, right? I hadn't shared it with them, but I wanted to know what their experiences were. So I really dove deep into the 18, 19, and 20 seasons, right? There's guys that have been here actually longer than that because you're dealing with 6-year seniors, but for the majority of our team, a lot of guys that experienced those seasons. If you look at those 3 years, like I did in January, you realize that the games went one of 2 ways. They were either won or lost real tight, or there were pretty extreme losses, and actually a couple extreme wins, right? The Nebraska game a year ago. And so I just thought, well, what we need to do is teach football, learn situational football. And we did that from January to where we are today. And then I think it manifested this past weekend. They are so close, and everybody wants to concentrate on why we lost, right? And I believe me, I'm diving into that knee deep and going through it, but I want you to understand that it's actually a step in the right direction to be disappointed that we finished close, right? Like, I can't accept that. I don't want to finish close, but we're in the battle. We're in the competition. We're right there knocking on the door. And that is why it hurts so much. They didn't leave the field in a bad place, right? They've been competitive in Big Ten play, and we want to win these games, and we're going to win these games. But unfortunately, we have to go through some learning pains. I have to learn our offense, our defense, and our special teams roster. working with a group of coaches that will work better to get better on every play, and that's what I've kind of stressed to them is, unfortunately, these last two have ended in defeat in Big Ten play. So what do we have to do to change, right? And it could be as simple as one play. It could be as simple as a series. It could be as simple as a scheme. As a coach, like I ask every one of our coaches how I can be different, right? So as a head coach, I need to be different. As a coach that's in charge of a positional group room, or in Ryan and Tony's case, a unit, those are all things that will evolve and get better with time. And that's kind of where we're at. So, for us to move forward, we have a difficult challenge this week in Charlotte, right? A team that's 3-1. First game of the year, they beat Duke. Duke went on to have success since that game, right? So, however you want to look at it, like that's a game that we looked at heavily, as well as their games of the past. Coach has done a nice job since he got there about instilling a mentality in them. They're a very confident group, play with a lot of energy and excitement on all three phases: offense, defense, and special teams. So that's there. But I do think this game has to be made about us as players and coaches. We really want to make this here at home, in front of our crowd, in front of a student section. It's been absolutely phenomenal. I think we will get a few of our players back. Last week, stood here on Monday, I thought we were going to be a little bit healthier in the end, and we were. I realized probably Wednesday, I believe it was Wednesday at some point, I pulled DJ out of practice and realized he wasn't going to be able to go through the game like we had hoped he would. I pulled Chase out. I pulled Spoon actually didn't practice. He just wasn't going to be in a position to help us last week. So I left Chase and Sid behind because, Chase and Spoon behind because they would actually get more benefit in staying behind. And just a simple thing that Josh has promoted here within our athletic department is just a continuity of helping each other out. So our guys actually stayed and went to the basketball arena and got treatments on Saturday when we weren't here. Just like another great indication of how much this athletic department works together. We tried to get our guys to get a couple extra treatments in hopes that they'll be with us this week. I don't know whether they will or not. I think I took Jake because Jake stands for so much more than just a linebacker for us. He's a great, him and Doug Kramer both probably, when they speak, everybody listens, and those two guys are important for our program, not just only in the way they play, but the way they speak, and it's important, and both those guys are 6-year seniors, right? There's a great quote in football that I always love to use, really in sport, right? Seniors always graduate, but tradition never does, right? And the tradition that those guys have is they know how to play the game in the preparation during the course of the week, and then obviously the game on Saturday. So I really wanted those guys to stay with us. There was an outside chance Jake could play. He couldn't pass the test that he needed to pass to play on Saturday, so he was limited from playing in the game, but we do expect him to play this week. So I'm excited for that in that regards, but we haven't practiced, obviously until Tuesday to see where that's at. So from a health standpoint, that's just about the most updated information I can give you. And as is the case with everything, we're always going to look at and analyze where we're at, offense, defense, special teams. I think defensively, as you can tell in the numbers, right? I thought the last 2 weeks we've made a lot of really good improvement. I think Ryan has learned his roster, done some good things offensively. We've had a little bit of a moving project, right, from the way that we started the first game, obviously with BP and the way he got knocked out of the game, the way Art came in, the way we put BP back in the lineup, and then where we are today. Also just at running back right now, this is 2 games Chase has missed, right? Our starting tailback, probably our best, most consistent performer, first, second, third down, was totally removed for the game the second time in a five-game season. On Saturday, it's not an excuse, but it is reality that I as a coach have to face, right? We didn't have our starting tailback, didn't have our starting middle linebacker, and our starting corner, and arguably 3 of our probably top 4 or 5 players. So we had guys fill in and step up and do a lot of really good things. I'm excited what that brings us in the future. The emergence of Josh McCray continues to be impressive to me, but also to now get Pat Bryant made a couple critical, big time in my opinion, catches for a true freshman, playing the most amount of snaps he's ever played. And then we used Kanena on special teams, and hopefully can continue to increase his role. 2 offensive linemen, Kreutz and Barlev, 2 guys that we repped a lot during the course of the week. May see them more and more as we move forward. So a lot of positives in that right direction. And I just like the attitude in the Smith Center. The group's really, coaches and players, has continued to be a lot more resilient than I probably would be. But I do know as a coach, I met with our leadership council yesterday and our captains, and couldn't be more impressed with the attitude they have right now moving forward. So hopefully that'll show up Saturday in a big way for us to perform out here in front of the crowd.
Coach, Ryan Walter seems to be pulling something out of Kirby Joseph maybe we haven't seen before. What's been the key to that?
For you guys that have obviously interviewed Kirby, he's a live wire, right? Like from day one when I got here to where we are, he's very, he just lives life every day. He came in yesterday with a pencil and paper and wanted to know what I saw from him on what he could do better. He just is a very confident young man. I think he takes every day to try to improve. I think from Ryan's standpoint, Ryan played the position, walked the position. Like he's very, very beneficial to those guys. Seen a lot of improvement in the back end, especially at the safety position, on how they see the game before the play is snapped. And I think that's the one thing that I stress to Kirby. The more information you can gather and process and deliver to not only yourself but to your teammates at the safety position, everybody will play better.
Coach, you talked about the change in culture. The defense they had a good game against Maryland and a great game against Purdue. Is the defense changing, improving, a sign that the culture is improving?
I think, like I said, there's a lot of indicators, things that you guys see on game day. You obviously only see them on Saturdays. I see them during the course of the week. I see the way they practice. I see them in the hallway. I see them coming in my office. With success, right? You feel confident. You feel better that you're going to do it. I think that some new players have emerged. I go back to even just the emergence of Seth in that game that he played. Like all of a sudden, that kind of forged the way for other guys to be like, oh, when I get my chance, like maybe Taz played a little bit better on Saturday because of what he saw Seth do the week before. Does that make sense? I looked. I give a lot of credit to Josh. When I first got in general discussion with him, he talked about the Purdue game in 2019 about one of the games that it really just felt like Illinois was in control of from the get-go, and so I really had looked at that game as a bigger picture. But then last week, looking at the 2019 film and application to our game this week, Brian and I both talked about, you saw Kaylon Tolson and Tariq Barnes in that game, and they ended up being big players in this game. So I am excited that we continue to find some new players and younger players that haven't played a lot of snaps, and they get better. So I think that's helped us out defensively quite a bit, and also in the kicking game.
I know after the game on Saturday, you said you didn't consider going to art. Is that something you'll evaluate at all going forward?
I appreciate the question. I know because the starting quarterback, it's a hot topic. I think you guys also understand and appreciate, like, whatever the situation is in the Smith Center, like I can't, like, if there was a time where I was thinking about changing right guard, like I obviously switched out Seth and Isaiah. We didn't announce that to the world, right? I get why you got to ask a question. I would tell you BP probably, right after the game, also on Sunday when I had a conversation with him and to where we are today, he knows he wants to get better, right? But it's the same thing. I as a head coach have to get better, right? As a unit or a positional leader, as a position coach, as the starting right guard, the starting left tackle, the starting defensive tackle, everybody has to get better. Even though we've had a little bit of success in certain phases for certain phases of the game, to get a Big Ten W, or to get a W this weekend in a non-conference game, we all have to be better.
You mentioned Kaylon and Tariq. What did you kind of see out of them and stepping up in replacement for Jake?
It's been fun, Alec, just because those are two guys that we didn't get to see in the spring at all, right? So, like, literally didn't get to see them run, do anything football-wise. We got to see him physically walk around, talk with him, get to know him a little bit, but didn't get to see him perform. So then in fall, both those guys were actually limited even when we started fall camp. They literally weren't cleared full participation in practice until our first game. So it's been a 5-week get-to-know-you kind of thing. They're both awesome kids. They're both very athletic. They're very, very, I've coached linebackers my whole career, so just tangibly when I saw them, like they got a lot of the DNA that you want, right? Like they can run, they can strike, they can hear, they can listen, they got good vision. Linebackers, a lot of times, if they can see things without turning their head, that's a very good sign. They got great peripheral vision, very, very high football IQ. I sat there on Saturday morning, the way that we were laid out in the hotel, there was a defensive meeting room that was on a certain level of the hotel, and I came and I was going to go in there and I was going to do some prep work myself, and I walked in and Tariq Barnes is in there going through the linebacker exam with Kanena, and I kind of just stood there for a minute. They couldn't see me, right? And I just was blown away with the information giving that Tariq was sharing with Kanena, and it was like having another coach in the room with him there, right? And Coach Boo wasn't in there wasn't any coach in there, and I just witnessed something that, like, for a coach is so cool. Because when that happens, like, even the highest levels, like when I was in the NFL and like on a Super Bowl championship team, like I saw older roster players take a rookie under his wing because they knew at some point he might help them win the game. Like that's the stuff that you don't have, and I'm not trying to like say anything that you guys don't like. That's the stuff that I see every day that makes my Sundays a little bit better than a fan's day, right? I wish I could just have a camera in a Smith Center every day to let the outside world know what's happening. Our kids feel it. That's when I met with the leadership group last night. I met with the Illini Council and the senior captains. Like, I was kind of blown away with how positive they were. And they talked about the hope that we've tried to instill in them and the confidence they have, and they're frustrated because they got to go out and hug their parents after a loss, and they realize how close they are. So when that does turn, it's going to be extremely gratifying, but you can't force something that isn't earned, and until we earn it, that's the feelings that unfortunately we're going to have.
Brett, you talked about close losses. Just to bring up an example from this program that you would know, 2006, that Illinois team lost close to you, and then the next year they're able to beat you and go to a Rose Bowl. Like, how do you know that the team is learning from these kind of experiences?
Yeah, great question. So twofold is you got to honor the moment, right? If you just turn a blind eye to it and act like it never happened, one of the things that is my daily challenge is to trying to keep these guys moving forward without being negative. I realized early on in my coaching career, so like you guys are experienced, you've been around, some of you have known me for a while, but the actions that I have on a Saturday are based off of 30 years of college football and 12 years as a head coach that have put me in this position, and that's what I try to teach not only our players but our coaches, right? It's the first time I made a decision early in this process to hire two coordinators I've never worked with before, right? Like, I knew the benefits of that. I knew the drawbacks, that I'd have to work through some growing pains to get where we need to be. Have a roster fully aware of how many COVID super seniors are out there, and they've had some good times, but unfortunately I'm here because the bad times outweigh the good, right? So I didn't want to take them down the rabbit hole of what they've already lived through. I want to take them through the rabbit hole of what it can be. And like, I don't know if it's going to pay off this week against Charlotte, or when these guys are having an opportunity to play at the next level, or maybe it's next year and they're working for IBM. Like, I don't know what it's going to be, but like, these moments of adversity are teaching them much more than what's in front of them. I'm confident of that, just because I can see their reactions and the way they carry themselves. Jake Hansen, he didn't get cleared on Saturday, but I think probably Thursday, Friday, he may have thought, like, I don't know if I'm going to be. So I'm watching a kicking period, and I watch him come over to the scout look team that's going against our KOR team, and he is encouraging but also getting after freshmen, sophomores, guys that aren't playing, that are given a look about how important this is. And I pointed it out to him last night in front of that leadership group, because that's something as a coach, you want it to happen, but you can't yell at him to like, go take that moment to go coach those other guys. I talked to Doug Kramer during that week when I knew he wasn't going to play. I said, hey, the benefit you can give me this week is you can teach some of these younger O-linemen some things that you would be doing this week to prepare for this game that next year you're not going to be able to tell them. All right? You're going to be in an NFL camp or an NFL program. I shared with a group yesterday, I'm not going to ignore the opposite, right? Like, you guys wanted to ask me a lot of questions about my fourth down decisions. Like, the one thing that I shared with the group, and I'll say, is like, a consistency breeds a lot of success, right? And I made a decision on the decision at hand the week before. The decision this week had nothing to do with what happened the week before. And I think the more people who are around me, they'll know that. Like, and I gave an example, like, I called a 4th and 4 punt fake down to win my first Big Ten championship from my own 26-yard line. A lot of people wouldn't have done that, but when you make a fourth down decision, you make a fourth down decision with the idea that you're going to have success. I would say better than a 90% chance of success, because the results of what failure brings is catastrophic. So that's what you make decisions based off of. It's not based off of Twitter reactions or making people feel better after a couple pops, right? Like, you base it off of facts, and that's what I think our team believes with me and with our coaches, is that we're factually putting them in the best positions to have success, and we gain that trust more and more every day.
I have a question about using Josh McCray.
As a true freshman, assuming he's fully healthy, he's a bigger body. Do you have to watch his usage though, because this is his first year?
Great question. All right, so check the facts, right? Like, what game did Josh McCray not play in this year?
First game?
Nebraska.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't ready. Okay? So as a head coach, I made the decision not to play him. What I didn't know, that I learned from Josh McCray, is that probably decision engaged him to be more the next week, right? And that led us to where we are today. I'd like to think as a head coach, I'm probably the only one that was aware of that. Like, because we were talking about playing him or not playing him, but I kind of just saw the way he was wired and the way he was going through it and what I thought it could be. So we didn't even travel him to the hotel, right? So the only win that we didn't have this year was a game that maybe right now one of the best players on our team, at least especially one of the better younger players, didn't even play it. Process that, right? And the reason I didn't do it is because I felt if I put him in against Nebraska, he would meet failure, and that failure can be catastrophic to your career, right? It may have set him back 5, 6, 7 games. Whereas now he watched the game unfold in front of him that we were able to win, and he wanted to taste it, right? And even the first game he was in, there was a flash of it, but we've built this thing up, and literally before the game on Saturday, Wednesday or Thursday, I'm like, let's take the training wheels off and let this guy run, right? And every player in that building knew it, not only himself, but especially when I knew Chase wasn't going to play, I'm like, and then Jakari, right? Like, great example of when to put him in and exert him, because now all of a sudden he's a different running back and he comes off of those 2 big runs, right? So we'll monitor and assess where Josh is at. I know CP had a meeting with him later today. I'll actually meet with him this week as well, just to kind of show him some things I saw. Like, I have a Josh McCray clip in my desk computer where I just pull off plays that I know I can really help him on. But also there's a play that no one even realizes, right? So he's involved in a protection, and BP's got an answer that he doesn't like, so he scrambles out to his right, and Josh McCray sprints in front of a defender and just throws his hand up and stops running and high screens him. Nobody ever coached him to do that. His football DNA took in. Like, that was like truly one of the more incredible plays that I saw from this past Saturday. We teach it in special teams, you teach it in certain return games, but he had learned that somewhere and threw it into that moment, which saved a hit on BP. That's another great example of, like, every game he teaches me something about him that I didn't know, that just gets me excited about, like, where he's going to be.
Does he have the potential to be a guy that defensive coordinators have to spend extra time preparing for?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. Like, everybody knows where he's at, right? Like, when he comes on the field, you hear the defensive coaches or defensive players talk about zeros in the game, right? Like, you're already drawing attention. Yeah, Josh is listen, I've had a lot of great running backs in my career. I was very excited when we signed him, but I would say, 5 games into a career with him, I have to, continue to mold him and build him and, like, help him. His Aunt Lisa, I just got a text from her today, like, his high school coach, like, the people that are in his wheelhouse, I communicate regularly, because it's not only the physical development, it's the emotional development of him. And that's why he will be a very big part. He will be probably one of the major faces of this program when it turns, of why it turns is because of him.
Bret, you said about evaluating everything. Offensively, obviously struggles the last couple weeks to put points on the board. What are your expectations moving forward of what you want out of your offense?
A very good kind of summation is, like, if you just take the defense side of the ball, Ryan's, we have some guys that are playing now that weren't playing before, some guys that were playing that aren't playing, right? So when you make those decisions, you just are looking for the right ingredients, right? Like, I don't know how many guys are master chefs, right? But, like, I know how to make certain things in the kitchen, right? Like, and I don't need any recipe, or I just know what's good, right? I think as a coordinator, when you recognize that you've got all the right parts and you're putting it together the right way, is when you got something. And I think TP and the offensive staff has had a lot of, if you think about the transition in the roster, right? Like, if you look at wide receiver, Casey Washington wasn't with us. Isaiah's a wide receiver. Duspan switches to wide receiver 3 days before Nebraska. The only guy that's been consistently there has been Donnie, right? And then we got, some new guys. You take tight end, and our guys are going to be DJ, Luke, and Tip. Tip was a walk-on tight end that I put on scholarship that, like, I told him, like, I'm giving you this with the intention, even though it's a one-year scholarship, to never take this away from you. Go run, right? So that 3rd and 3 that bounced off his hands could have been a better throw, but I just literally grabbed him. I said, my friend, the next one is yours. Like, just embrace this, right? Like, the next one, I promise you, is yours. The next one that comes your way, you're going to own it. Luke Ford probably just played the most complete game as a tight end since I've been with him. But also just, I've had a lot of good tight ends in the past. This kid's playing some pretty good football right now. Unfortunately, it's not a win, but like people that watch and understand that position, when you watch 82 play, you're gonna be like, okay, I get it. And it's been a process with he and I, right, to get to where we are. At running back, you talk about the first game, you know, with Chase, Reggie, Jakari, Mike Epstein, you know, that's totally changed now, right? Like, from Nebraska to where we are. And then obviously the center position, to have Doug Kramer in and out of a couple different games, to have the kind of rotation at the guard positions that we've had, and then the big one everybody wants to talk about is quarterback, right? So, you know, I think the part that made me make the decision to go back to BP is also the same thing that can, you know, guide us in the future. Like, when those decisions are going to be made, they have to be made with the same agenda as everything else. What gives us the best chance to win? And BP, I think, knows he wants to get better. I think we got to put him in better position to do things from a coaching standpoint and a scheme standpoint. But the picture hasn't been as clean offensively for a first year staff, and we're getting there. Believe me, we're getting there. And then this week's going to be a different game plan, because we got to play a team that, you know, is very dynamic. They do a lot of things defensively, from an odd front to a 4-down front, and do some things in the back end. Very aggressive in the way they play, but we're playing in a Big Ten stadium. We need to make it a Big Ten game.
Coach, delving back into the in-game decision-making a little bit, is there a point in the season where the win-loss record plays into that at all, and you kind of throw caution to the wind a little bit?
Yeah, so great question. I think that the thing that I love is a little saying called 1-0, right? So, like, at some point we'll be at a place in this program, like, where I've been a part of places where you're, you know, 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, 6-0, 6-1, and whatever it is, everybody wants to concentrate on an overall record, but what our teams will concentrate on is the week at task. There is no difference in our preparation for Charlotte than there was for Nebraska. So with that being said, if I ask our players to prepare that way, I think as a coach I have to prepare the exact same way. In college football, the way it lays out, there's obviously going to be conference races and divisional races, but in the end, the ultimate goal is to make the college football playoffs, right? So every game matters, and the outside world can think like that. It's a great thing to write about, talk about, think about, chat about, but the reality of college football coaches is every game matters. So there is no decision in one game that's going to be affected because of what happened in the previous game or the games that lie in front of us.
What progress did you see from BT from the first full game to the second full game? And I guess how do you keep your different teams correct?
I'd love to go. I just can't hear it.
I'm sorry. I said, what progress have you seen from BP just from that first full game to his second full game?
Well, he only played in the first, right? And he played for a little bit, and then missed the second and third, and has been with us the last two. You know, I think the thing that BP brings, you know, in the preparation, you like the way he throws the football, you like the maturity that he has, the choices that he's able to make because of his arm strength. The run game is the run game. We got to be able to play off it. I think we're a run play action team. I would say the part that he has definitely got to improve on is, right, the consistency of making plays, the opportunities that exist. I'm not going to put that drop pass on it. Like, I know he laid out for it, but his receiving skills are not taking part in any of our decision factors. But I think that's, you know, the part that I was encouraged about our offense is we did take some shot plays that unfortunately didn't happen. There was a wheel route to Reggie into the boundary over there that, you know, got tipped, that I think was a huge hit. I think the double pass from Isaiah to BP was going to be a nice play. You know, unfortunately, those things didn't materialize. We had about 5 or 6 shot plays that actually in all the games we played at this point, we've hit at least one of those, and that could have been the difference on Saturday, right? But that's there.